Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews. Welcome to the show. We have a big binge for you this week in Watchmen. I've been trying to tackle this one before the Emmys, which are, I guess, at this point next week. And this actually might be my last big binge for a while because now that it's fall season, there's a lot of new shows rolling out, even though Hollywood still hasn't started, filming new shows. I mean, I guess they've started filming a few, but, for the most part, the fall schedules for networks are not going to roll out for like another month or so. But there's been a lot of new streaming shows lately, and a few new shows here or there with social distancing themes that we will tackle in the future. But for this week, we just have 3 new shows, which gives us room for a big binge, and that is Watchmen. Glad I finally got to see it before all the awards. But first, we have to talk about the news. There is a lot of news to cover, too, so we'll try to keep it lean and mean here. So just one renewal for you this week, and that is The Chi on Showtime. This is a show I have not seen, but they advertised the heck out of it on Hulu. Because they want you to upgrade to the Showtime on Hulu, package. But this is one of the shows they really tout as hey, you can watch The Chi. I've never seen it, but it looks good. It looks interesting. This is going to be season 4 for The Chi, so at some point I'm going to have to sit down and watch this thing. And a few cancellations for you. One that is a show I've not heard of, which is weird because it's on AMC. It stars Zachary Quinto, who I like. It's called Nosferatu, and it's NOS, the number 4, and then the letter A, and then the number 2. So they're trying to be cutesy with the name. So maybe I have seen it or read about it, not seen the show, but seen it in print or read about it. But I'm just I don't know what this is, Nosferatu, but I guess that is not getting a 3rd season. Apparently the 2nd season ratings were almost half of what the 1st season was, so people not necessarily digging that. But the real big news of cancellations is not so much a cancellation as just a stoppage of the show. It's one of these things we're gonna go out on our own terms. So we're, they're not canceled necessarily, but they're going to stop the show, and that is Keeping Up with the Kardashians. This is going to end next year after 20 cycles, 14 years overall. They call them seasons sometimes, but they used to, reality shows, if they did 2 quote-unquote seasons in a year, they would call them cycles, but whatever, I don't know. So I still call them cycles, but after 14 years, they are, leaving the family, and they have no other shows currently on in the pipeline. For a while they had all of these spin-offs on E. They had Kylie and whatever. I hate the Kardashians so much. Kylie and Kendall, take New York, whatever. And then Rob Kardashian had his own show, and then obviously they did stuff with Caitlyn, and I hate all of this. I hate all of them. They're shrewd business people. I'll give them that. They've made a career out of, being socialites, basically. But all right. But look, here's the deal. I don't think that they're going away. I don't think, what I personally think is that they are going to leave and start their own network. I haven't heard anything in that vein. That's just my guess, that they're going to start some sort of 24/7 Kardashian channel, and it may be a streaming service that people will pay for, because that's what these guys do. They're not going to give it to you for free anymore, right? And I think part of it may also be some of the Kanye stuff. Obviously he's got some mental health issues. I think we can all agree with that, and maybe they don't want to really highlight that as part of the show anymore. I don't know. But either way, goodbye, good riddance. I've never seen any of your show except for clips on The Soup, and I dislike you all immensely, so goodbye. Alright, but speaking of leaving, this was quite a bomb this week in terms of people leaving things. Anna Faris off of Mom after 7 seasons, again on her own terms. It's not like she was fired, but she released a statement which I guess would be really shortly before filming the new season. You wonder how long people knew about this in the writer's room, because even though production has been shut down on these shows, people have been writing the whole summer. So has that thrown things into an upheaval for the writers of Mom? I don't know, but she released a statement saying she was going to pursue other opportunities, and she loved being on Mom for 7 years, but it's time to move on. It's so interesting because, well, first of all, Chuck Lorre and his programs have been down this road before with Charlie Sheen and Two and a Half Men, but it's just interesting to me the evolution of this show in general. Like I still watch Mom. I've watched it from the beginning. I really like Allison Janney. If she left the show, I would stop watching. Anna Faris, I can take or leave, but Allison Janney I really love. But the show started out like the first 2 seasons was there were 3 moms. It was Allison Janney, Anna Faris, and then Anna Faris's daughter, whoever, I forget the character's name or the actress, but daughter and son. So the ex-husband was in the picture for a little bit, but then after season 2, we completely dropped all of that. And it became like about the friends from the AA group, which I like. I mean, Marjorie and I forget all the names on the show. I'm so bad with names. But then they added, Kristen Johnson from Third Rock from the Sun a few seasons ago. They added maybe in season 3 or 4. They added Jamie Presley from My Name Is Earl. So, they've obviously cultivated now more of a ensemble show, and that's the way it's been for a while. So maybe Anna Faris just didn't feel like her acting chops were stretching, but it's not like she's done a lot of other things lately. I mean, Overboard came out 2 years ago, I think. I don't really see her doing a lot of stuff, but she is, I think, newly married, right? Because her and Chris Pratt split a couple years ago. I think they're both with new people or remarried now. So maybe she wants to focus on that. Maybe she wants to have a family. I don't know. But anyway, she's out. So season 8 will look quite different, I think, for Mom. All right. Up next, we want to talk about Ellen and the toxic culture. She's going to address that in the season premiere of the show, 18th season, by the way, of Ellen. And that's going to be on September 21st. She is going to talk about that, I guess, up top in the quote-unquote monologue. It's not really a monologue so much. It's just Ellen saying hi to everybody and some musings here or there or whatever. But look, I have some thoughts on this whole thing that I actually was talking to my buddy Joe about off air last week when I was over there. But I really think this is a case of just a sort of mountain that was made out of a molehill. I mean, I really think that, is there some, issues on the stage of the show, in the background of the show? Yeah, there probably is, because guess what? This is a top-rated show. It is after 18 years, it is a well-oiled machine, and it just seems like there were maybe some people in the mix that weren't, up to snuff. And so some problems arose, and they were like, oh, Ellen sucks, she's so mean to people, this, that, and the other thing. And I also think, because it's such a well-oiled machine, Ellen is probably on this, not pedestal, but she can't be bothered with the day-to-day minutia of everything. And that's why she's got producers. That's why she's got, all these people, showrunners. And so I think that may have gotten out of hand, too, where people have, were not really running things even past Ellen, or, they were making decisions for her that she wasn't aware of. I'm not saying there's, no blame for Ellen to go around. There probably is, but I feel like it's more out of ignorance than anything else. I mean, the only thing that sort of struck me as odd about this whole thing is that a lot of her, real famous friends, like Jennifer Aniston, for example, weren't coming out and saying, oh, well, Ellen, this isn't the Ellen I know, da-da-da-da-da. But that can be so touchy these days, Remember when Matt Damon came on the one morning show, I forget, it might have been Good Morning America, and was like, during all the Me Too stuff, and he wasn't defending anybody. He just was like, well, I think there's a difference between, rape and, somebody calling somebody, hot or something at work. And he got, all this flack for it. And it's like, okay, but there actually is a difference between those two things, Not everything is under the same umbrella. And I think it's that sort of thing with Ellen. We don't do politics really on my channel, so I don't want to go off on a tangent. But I do think it's interesting she's addressing it. I would like to hear what she has to say about it. I've read the statements that she's already made. I know they fired a couple of the people behind the scenes from investigations. But look, NBC is promoting the return of Game of Games, her game show, and that's going to be in October. So obviously they're fine with her. I think everything's going to be all right for Ellen, but will her ratings diminish a bit for the season? I actually think they will. I think people are taking this very seriously, and I don't know. I think it's a lot of trying to sabotage a person at the top of their game is what I think about it. And I don't know. Am I a little bit biased because Ellen's done so much for the gay community? Maybe, but at the same time, she's done so much for every community. On her show, she gives checks away like they're candy, to people. And obviously, that's not coming out of her own pocket. But, she's got the platform to do it. So, look, we'll see what she says. But I think I think it was a shame of this blown out of proportion thing for Ellen. So her first guest, by the way, on that first episode back is going to be Tiffany Haddish. So big name there. All right. This one's a little quick one, but Nick Jr. Had this show called Made by Maddie that was going to be coming out this week, I think, and it was pulled right before its premiere because people were noticing the similarities to the Oscar-winning short Hair Love, which is a brilliant short. But they showed some pictures side by side in the article I read, and yeah, I mean it looks very similar. Like the black girl that's probably similar in age to Hair Love has like a pink bow in her hair, just like in Hair Love. The characters are designed the same, but here's the funny thing. So this has been in production at Nick for 5 years, or maybe it wasn't at Nickelodeon the whole time, but it's been in the works in production for 5 years. So that's before Hair Love. So, if they were to take it to court on it, I think that this Made by Maddie might win. And I'm not saying Hair Love copied them either. I'm just saying, sometimes two similar ideas can come up. But I think it's interesting. I don't know if we'll ever see this show now, or if Nickelodeon is going to sort of, kind of fight to make people realize this came first. I don't know. But I loved Hair Love, so if it was anything like that, I would enjoy that. Okay, ABC has a ballot initiative to get out the vote, voter registration. They're doing 3 different things on their various networks. So already they had the other night a Kevin Hart comedy special called VOMO, Vote or Miss Out. Didn't see it, but I like Kevin Hart. I'm sure it was fine. And then over on Freeform, Cal Penn is going to be doing a 6-episode unscripted show called Cal Penn Approves This Message. It starts next week on the 22nd. I may review that for the show. I don't know. Sometimes that sort of non-scripted stuff is hit or miss for me, whether I review it. Sometimes I'll review it if there's nothing else going on that week. But it's kind of the, fall premieres, so there's probably a lot of stuff going on. But I don't know. I like Freeform. I like Cal Penn, so I might check it out and review it. It's basically going to be like, comedy sketches, maybe some musical performances, and just sort of more, no pun intended, free-form type stuff. And that's going to be a 6-episode thing. And then Blackish, Blackish is always at the forefront of all these political things. In early October, they're going to have a 2-part episode, which is going to be half live and half animated. Not live, but live action. And so I guess Blackish has resumed filming. I'm not sure yet, but I know a lot of the ABC shows have. I know the Connors has, Goldberg's has. So Blackish may be on that as well. But the animation stuff is easy. You can animate things, from socially distant places, and that's why Fox's fall schedule, especially on Sundays, is largely A-OK because they have all those cartoons. But Blackish has done, like some drips and drabs of animation here and there over the years, but not ever a full animated episode. So that will be interesting. It's about basically Junior, this being his first presidential election that he's able to vote in. And I guess the animated portion is going to be more of like a fantastical thing where Dre's boss becomes like governor or mayor or something. And, he's, sort of like but look, on the show, he's he's more of like a doofus, but realistically, I mean, he's a racist. You know, they play him off as a comical doofus, but he's a racist that doesn't know he's racist, basically. So I guess that'll be interesting, you know, when he gets to a power in government. But of course, it's all going to be like a fantasy type sequence. So that will be coming up in October. So some get out the vote things. Oh, and speaking of Hair Love, the dude that's animating it is going to be I forget his first name, but it's something Cherry. That is the creator of Hair Love. I want to say Mark Cherry, but that's the Desperate Housewives dude, right? So I don't think it's that. But anyway, so moving up to reboots and spinoffs, we have a few here to talk about. First of all, this isn't really a reboot or a spinoff, but I think it kind of is. ABC's doing this show called Emergency Call with Luke Wilson. That's going to be airing the first episode September 28th. And it just reminds me a lot of Rescue 911. Like Rescue 911 with William Shatner back in the day had reenactments of 911s, and this is going to be more like they're going to play the first few minutes of a 911 call as it really happened, and then they're going to, I guess, highlight the people that took the call, and then I don't know. Are they going to tell us what happened after the hang up? That's what I'm interested in. Like, where does this call go from here? Whereas Rescue 911 was more, reenactments of things. But I don't know. So it's not really a reboot or a spinoff, but I'm sort of lumping it in that camp a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. Again, I don't know if I'll review that. Maybe I will. Pretty Little Liars is back already. This is weird. This just ended like 4 years ago, 2016. Then they had a spinoff called The Perfectionist. That ended in, I think, 2018. So now they're already rebooting Pretty Little Liars. There's going to be new characters, all of that stuff. Riverdale showrunner is going to be at the helm of this as well. So obviously it's got that sort of young adult pedigree. And they're talking about it likely going to HBO Max, which is kind of interesting because obviously CW, or not CW, Freeform is where, all these shows kind of took off, and originally it was on whatever Freeform was before, ABC Family, I guess. So it's sort of weird it would end up at HBO Max and not like Hulu is what is owned by Disney and ABC. So and then speaking of ABC and Blackish, we've got yet another Blackish spinoff. This is going to air in 2021. We have Mixed-ish already. We have Grownish. Speaking of Freeform, Freeform's got all the hits. We're going to have Old-ish, and that is going to be with the same characters and actors from Blackish, Lawrence Fishburne and Jenny Lewis as Dre's parents. They're going to take a stab at moving on with a relationship, getting back together after several decades, which I'm about a half a season behind on Blackish, right? I'm like in the first handful of episodes from the previous season, but the Lawrence Fishburne character, Dre's father, is about to get married in the episodes I'm watching, and not to his ex-wife. So I don't, obviously that plot line, spoiler alert for me, I guess, that plot line's over. I guess that falls flat. So we'll see what happens with that. So far, look, I like Grownish a lot. Mixed-ish is decent. I'm still a little on the fence about it, but it's still good. I'm still watching it. I'm not sure how long term I'm going to love it, but the characters are all good. But I don't know. Do we have too many spinoffs? The last comedy show with this many spinoffs has to be like All in the Family or Happy Days or something. I mean, like 3 spinoffs for one sitcom seems like a lot, but whatever. Jenny Lewis is like one of my favorites on Blackish, so I don't mind that she's getting her own spinoff, but it's just a lot. And then Fresh Prince is the last one I want to talk about, because we talked about a couple weeks ago this Morgan Cooper viral video that fell into Will Smith's lap, and he loved it, and it was like a more dramatic take on Fresh Prince. So they decided to go ahead with a reboot. Well, it finally has a home, it finally has a contract, and so this is going to be on HBO Max, which makes sense because it is the... Oh, no, I'm sorry. There is going to be a Fresh Prince reunion on HBO Max. They filmed it last week. It's going to air sometime this fall. And that makes sense because it is the official streaming home of Fresh Prince. It's the exclusive streamer. HBO Max has all the Fresh Prince shows. So other than linear TV or your DVD sets, you can't see Fresh Prince anywhere right now. except HBO Max. But Peacock is the one who has picked up the reboot, and that makes sense because NBC was the original home of Fresh Prince. Andy and Susan Borowitz, who co-created the original show, are going to be on board. Quincy Jones and Benny Medina, who were heavily involved in the original show, they are on board, and Will Smith is on board as well, all as, producers and showrunners and that sort of thing, executive producers. And and Morgan Cooper himself, the creator of the original viral video, he's going to be a part of this as well. So it's going to take place with a whole new family and stuff. Kind of like One Day at a Time reboot or the Party of Five reboot. It's going to be the same sort of thematically type things. And look, the 90s, 80s and 90s, especially I would say mid 80s to mid 90s, that decade was rife with these sitcoms that had these message episodes. A very special episode of Blossom, a very special episode of Growing Pains, the Mr. Belvedere, where the kid the kid in Wesley's class has AIDS, all of that kind of stuff. So there's been plenty of dramatic episodes already of Fresh Prince, so it's not that much of a leap to go from this laugh out loud sitcom to something more dramatic. It's really not. I mean, obviously Fresh Prince was hilarious too, but that was one of the cornerstones of the very special episode. I would say top 5 probably shows that tackled the very special episode. So that'll be interesting. But it has a 2-year commitment already, which is very rare. It's been done a few times, but Apple TV Plus has ordered all their shows for 2 seasons to show people they were behind it. But without even a stitch of filming done, that is rare. Basically they went into Peacock with a treatment and an idea, and they were like, okay, cool, 2 seasons, goodbye. Which makes sense. Look, Fresh Prince still has a lot of love out there, so it makes sense. All right, we got to move on here to the reviews. So let's get to the 3 quick reviews, and then we're going to do the big binge with Watchmen. So first up is Transplant. This is a Canadian show that has made its way to NBC because, like we've been talking about the last few months, everything is shut down in Hollywood, so networks are sort of looking elsewhere to fill some of their holes, and that includes stuff from England, stuff from Australia, stuff from Canada. So this is something that probably would have never seen the light of day in America, if not, to be completely honest. And so essentially this centers on Bashir Ahmed, who is played by Hazma Haq, I want to say is how you would pronounce that. And basically he's a doctor from Syria who came to Canada as a refugee during their civil war over there, and is now basically trying to rebuild his career as a medical resident in the ER at York Memorial Hospital. In the very first scene of the first episode, he is shown, at this restaurant that he works at. That's not a correct sentence, but you know what I mean. The restaurant at where he works, or something like that. Anyway, I try to be grammatically correct. He is inundated here with this truck that drives right through the window of the restaurant, and a bunch of people are injured, so he jumps right into doctor mode, starts saving some people's lives, jump starts this woman's heart. So he goes to the hospital along with the other victims, and there's some police sniffing around the hospital, thinking he was the truck driver, thinking he was involved. The doctors are trying to tell him, no, dude, he saved these people, And as the cops are sort of trying to question him, he is going and saving other people that need help. So obviously the doctors and nurses are taking notice of this, sort of shocked at what's going on and everything. So by the end of the episode, we learn, I don't really do spoilers, but it's the first episode and it's the premise of the show, so I guess we got to get on board with this slight spoiler for the pilot. But by the end of the episode, they basically offer him a job at this hospital, to see where we go from here. So again, I don't really think that's spoiler because it's the premise of the show. So a lot of times in these pilots, you sort of know where it's going if you have read an overview. But this is a very interesting show. I like that we're getting these import shows that, look, I never probably would have even heard of Transplant if it wasn't for the pandemic and NBC trying to shop around for some other things that have already been in production. This has already been renewed for season 2 in Canada, so if it's a hit on NBC, maybe we will get a season 2 of it. They're doing great on hospital shows over there on NBC. New Amsterdam, in fact, I've been binging it because it's going off Hulu on Monday, so yesterday I watched like 4 episodes straight of New Amsterdam, so that's one I love. And of course they have their Chicago trilogy, which has a medical component as well, so they've got Chicago Med. And really, in the past 20, 25 years, the pinnacle of hospital drama, it ain't Grey's Anatomy, everybody, it's ER, and that of course stems from NBC as well. So they have a rich history of these hospital dramas, and this one has got a great twist to it because of the immediacy, I guess, of the refugee kind of storyline, the immigration kind of storyline. Obviously, Canada has slightly different rules than the U.S. I don't think this is a show they could do with the same scripts here in the States, so it makes sense that it would take place in Canada. And, what's funny is just because something is filmed here and shown here doesn't necessarily have to take place here. There could be an American drama like this, but take place elsewhere, take place in Canada. I guess maybe it's too expensive or something to... I feel like it's cheaper to film in Canada. I don't know. For the tax breaks and stuff like that. But either way, whatever. I don't know what I'm talking about, honestly. But I really like this actor. He is really good at showing the fear, I think, of this character. But also the boldness, obviously. But, look, he's on the run from the law. And I think there's still going to be a lot of issues with the refugee nature of the character. I mean, I think, the cops aren't just going to be like, okay, cool, buddy. Like, that's sort of the premise of the show is, his citizenship and the refugee status and all that stuff. So I think we'll explore that more as the episodes go on. I think as pilots go, it was okay. I know it was a little more than okay, because I was certainly riveted with it. The problem is a lot of these side actors are not that great. There's one gal actually who is also really good. Not sure. Let's see. Not sure if I know because I don't know any of these characters I don't know any of the actors, so I don't know. But one of the females, one of the nurses on this show is a really good actress too. So they had a couple of scenes together, and they gelled very well. The other acting, I don't know. But look, hospital show acting isn't always the best, especially from like patients, people that are only there for one episode. And also the cop seemed a little over the top, But other than that, I think this show has a lot of potential. And I think it's one I may be able to add to my hospital repertoire. Right now, I only watch New Amsterdam, and then I watch The Resident on Fox. Love that show. I don't like The Good Doctor. I don't watch any of the NBC Chicago shows. I'm sure they're all fine. I just never took the time to kind of sit down with them. But, I could definitely see adding this to my rotation. I think it's got an interesting premise. And because it's Canadian, it's not a full season like we have here. There's only 13 episodes. So it'll be done pretty much by, I guess, the end of the fall, which is why NBC started it a couple of weeks before any of their other shows, because I guess they want to finish it out by December, so in January they can fill that slot with one of their original shows. I'm on board for this show. I leave Transplant with a B. I think it's got a lot of potential. Up next, we're going to talk about Love Fraud. This is on Showtime. It is a 4-part miniseries, and they've already shown the third one was on the other day, so there's only one more to go. So if you want to catch up, I'm sure Showtime has that available for you to stream or what have you before the last episode. But the center of this, it's a docuseries and a true crime series, but basically it revolves around this dude Richard Scott Smith, who was using the internet for years to prey upon all of these different women who, were lonely, in search of love, in search of companionship, and he just conned them out of tens of thousands of dollars, out of all this stuff. And basically, this show takes a look at the victims and the, detectives and all of that, and kind of trying to track this dude down. And I think I sort of, I don't like spoilers even in docuseries, but I did read an article about this show, just sort of the premise of it. And I guess in the fourth episode, they do come face to face with this dude. I don't know if the they in question are his victims or the law or the producers. I don't know, but I know that we do see him. So it does have some sort of ending where this dude is not, going to get away with this. We're going to see him, we're going to talk to him. It's not like he's on the lam completely. But there's no evidence of that in this first episode that I watched. And that's kind of what I have to grade it on. But I do know that at least it's not going to be super open-ended. Like where is this guy missing in action kind of thing. But he has several aliases, so he's got all these women under his thumb. And they all have come together. At first, of course, they all think they're alone, and oh my god, this guy conned only me, like what a jerk. And then this detective is doing this work to find him pro bono. She's like, I don't care, like let's nail this guy's hide to the wall. She's my favorite. Like she's great. She's no nonsense. She's like, let's F this guy up, But what the shining moments I think in this show are that the producers are not making I don't know how to say this. They're not making victims out of the victims. You know what I mean? Like this is not a story of like, look at these, dummies. How could they fall for this? Oh, these idiots. Like that's what Catfish does, that TV show. Which the movie Catfish was all right. The TV show is just like it makes a mockery out of the people that are being conned and being catfished. And that is not the case here. Here we are not saying like these idiots, how could this happen to you? We're saying like, oh man, like these women, in their 40s mostly, like were just lonely. They were looking for love. They they really thought they had found somebody, and you really feel bad for them. But again, they don't necessarily make them like the victim, like woe is them. Because you can see that they're all like very strong women. They seem smart. It sort of shows you that like, look, this could happen to almost anybody, kind of thing. And that's a great vibe for this kind of show. The people that did it, I want to get their names. They produced and directed. It's Heidi Ewing and Rachel Grady. They directed this wonderful documentary called Jesus Camp about 13 years ago, maybe. I was working at Hollywood Video when it came out, which is why I vaguely remember what year. But it was nominated for an Oscar. I mean, it was a really intense look inside these sort of, religious cult camps, basically, for children. And so they've been doing this sort of thing. They do documentary, they do expose type pieces, and they've been doing it for a long time. And they're real good at it. The editing in this is very solid. My only complaint would be that I'm not sure that they're parsing out the themes of the episodes properly. Like the first episode is really all just about these women. We barely get to know the guy at all. We hear a couple of voicemails from him, but it's more about like, let's meet all of these women, and before we kind of embark on our journey. I feel like maybe we could have sparsed that in a little more, so we get a little more in that first episode, like oomph with the dude, and to sort of like find out. But we do meet the detective, and I like that part because she's great. But yeah, I mean, I don't have too many gripes about this. I think it's a very interesting docuseries. I tend to sort of be hit or miss on the true life stuff, but I think this one, is mostly on the money. I'm going to leave Love Fraud with an A-. All right, let's move on here because I want to spend a lot of time on Watchmen. So Pure is going to be our final show here. This is another one that was an import from England, but picked up by HBO Max. So you can find this on there. It is a 6-episode season. However, it was not renewed over in the UK for season 2. So it turns out it's really going to be just a limited series to the one season. And it's essentially about this woman. Let's see what her name is. Charlie Clive is the actress, and essentially this is about her sex addiction and learning about what that means and her OCD. She realizes that maybe she's not a sex addict, maybe she's just massively OCD and never realized it, and this is how it manifests. So I watched the first 2 episodes of this, so I've seen like a third of the series, and essentially it's about her dealing with her mental condition and her brain kind of taking over, and it's a very interesting look at that sort of aspect of it. We see a lot of shows that are, well, first of all, this is part of the new like trend of all of these 20-something shows, like millennial type shows, young millennials, I guess, where we're looking at one sort of issue about this person, and sort of that's the basis for the show. Like Shrill is about A.D. Bryant and her character's weight issues. Rami, we reviewed that in the Big Binge last week, is more or less about Hassan Minhaj and his character dealing with, being a Muslim American and what that means, for his whole life and all of that. And here, and we've seen, the show on Showtime, I forget what it's called, but I loved it, where she's going to kill herself in the first episode. She's like a trans person. I forget the name of the show, but I love the show. I review so many shows on this that it's like, unless it's something that's talked about a lot, sometimes I forget the names. But anyway, there's a Abby McNamara, I think, is the actress's name on that show. But anyway, there's a whole glut of these shows. And so, does this one stand out? And if it does, how so? I think it does in the way that it's delving a little bit deeper into the psyche of this person. It does a lot of these, like in the first episode especially, before she really realizes it's the OCD, she thinks she has a sex addiction, which she still might. They're still exploring that, I guess. But, she's got these flashes, like anytime she meets somebody, she, kind of like pictures them naked, or she pictures like licking their cheek or whatever. Even if it's not somebody that she's attracted to or anything, it's just something that is taking over her brain. And the way it's portrayed is sort of Ally McBeal-ish, which I don't love. They're sort of portraying it as more of a comedic sort of thing, but like, okay, but this is a serious kind of issue, I feel like, for this person, and her brain is really kind of, taking over and maybe screwing her over in certain ways. So I think that's the show's biggest downfall, is that I don't think it's a comedy show at all. It's a half hour, and, typically that we have to put it in this, like, comedy box. This ain't a comedy, but they're, like, portraying it in parts like it is. And I think there's things that can be comedic in drama shows. I was having this conversation the other day with somebody that like This Is Us, that's a drama show, but it's got comedic elements because it's slice of life type thing. But this focuses mostly on this gal's, sort of, brain issues and her OCD and her sex addiction and all of that, which can have funny consequences, and there's funny moments in everything, slice of life type stuff, right? But they make the fantasy parts way more like comedic than they need to be. What's going on in her brain, because it ain't funny to her. She's like terrified by it because it's affecting everything she does. So to me, this is not at all a comedy. It is a drama, and they need to leave the comedy out of it. So that is the big downfall. But other than that, I mean, the writing's pretty good. I think it's a good sort of way into how the brain works with some of these, mental issues and problems. And I think it's tackling them really well in the dramatic parts. And I think it's not focusing on really too much else. I mean, she is the main character. She is in just about every scene. Like, we really are focusing on her. And I think that works. And, how her relationships are affected by it. I think all of that stuff works. But the comedy does drag it down, certainly for me. So I leave Pure with a B-. I imagine I'll probably watch the other 4 just to kind of compare and contrast to some of these other shows out there. But let's dive into the Big Binge. I try to make these shows less than an hour on the TV news and reviews, but God, there's so much to talk about with Watchmen. So let's talk about Watchmen. This is turns out to be a one-season show, a limited series. It was originally pitched as maybe more of an anthology. They would tackle maybe different parts of the world in other seasons. But Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse from Lost were the writers on this, and the sort of they adapted this version. Obviously, it's from the Alan Moore graphic novel from the 80s, Dave Gibbons as well, and Alan Moore. And it's, based on sort of that and sort of the movie a little bit, which is based directly on the comic. And originally the plan was they were going to do a season, and then they were going to step away, and if somebody else wanted to come in and continue the story, whatever, they could do that. But they've sort of decided at HBO, like, we don't really want to do this without Damon Lindelof, because he's created something so special with season 1. So that's it. It's just going to be a limited series. And look, the proof is in the pudding, because it was nominated for more Emmys this year than anything else. The Emmys will be next week, I think, or maybe the week after. But it got nominated for more than any other show. And look, spoilers for the rest of my review, but it deserves it. This is an interesting one, though, because this is a think piece of a show. And so the Rotten Tomatoes score for critics is very high, and for audience, it's very low. There's a big discrepancy. It's got a 95 for critics and a 55 for audience. Now, sometimes that can go either way. I've certainly had examples on my review show over this past year of, being more in line with the people than the critics. But I hear, boy, I don't like to spoil things up front for my review, but no, I'm definitely more in line with the critics. Let's just start there, I guess. So basically, this takes place about 34 years after the original novel, or whatever you want to call it, graphic novel. And this is it's taking place in the same world, certainly, and we see a lot of overlap with some of the characters. Dr. Manhattan certainly features, in this a lot. Ozymandias features, in this a lot. But they've also created plenty of new characters, including Regina King's outstanding Sister Knight character. So it's a little bit from the book, but it's more of a different interpretation in this world. So, Lindelof and Cuse designed this not to necessarily be a reboot, but sort of a reimagining of the world, and sort of a companion piece, if you will, to the original. So, it takes place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, after the original story, and we see right away in the very first scene of the first episode the Wall Street Massacre, which was the Tulsa Black Wall Street, they called it, which, and this has come up for me many times in the last few months with the Black Lives Matter stuff, because this is something I did not know about until Watchmen. I did not learn about this in school. I don't think a lot of people did. The Black Wall Street Massacre of 1921. It is so angering. It's so devastating that we don't learn this in school, and I'm glad we're learning it now. I think it sucks that we have to learn it from a TV show, but here we are. So anyway, I've espoused a lot of that stuff on my Facebook in the last few months, because it's just horrible to me that we gloss over in this country so many of our really, really historical moments that we need to be studying, because it's the cause of a lot of unrest, in this country. But anyway, so that is how we start the show, and so it takes place, in and around Tulsa for the rest of the series. But after a white supremacist attack on the police department shortly after, 30 years after that, we have only 2 surviving cops left on the beat, and so laws are passed now that allow cops to hide their identities because they're in such fear for their lives. Sound familiar? But one of these cops is Angela Abar, who is portrayed by Regina King, who is, her Watchmen name is Sister Knight, which I said, and she basically fights racists while dealing with all of the previous decades, of the Vigilantes. And there is, even in just this first episode, now I reviewed the first episode back in September when it came out. I believe I gave it an A-. And then, so I gathered some of my friends to do the top TV of the decade, and both Peter and Brittany, my buddies, graded this very, very highly. It was, I forget whether we knew it was a limited series when we did the best of the decade thing. I think maybe we did, because we separated it between comedies, dramas, and limited. And I know their number one on drama was The Leftovers, I think, was both of their number ones. So this may have been number one for limited. But if not, it was very high on their drama list. I forget whether we knew it was a limited series at the time. But anyway, it was very, very high on their list. And it was one I wanted to get back to. I have been a huge Regina King fan for a long time. 25 years, really. I mean, Jerry Maguire is when I just fell in love with her. But, I mean, I go back to 227, the sitcom in the 80s. I mean, she was the daughter on that. I loved that show. But, it's not like I could see at that point how, what a great actor she is. But I'll watch anything she's in now. I'm so glad she won an Oscar last year for Beale Street. But really, she is the... I would say she is the glue that holds this whole show together. Although Jeremy Irons is fantastic as well, as Adrian Veidt. But, and Ozymandias, his Watchmen name. And then, but you have so many people, like Jean Smart features in about half of these episodes, and I love her too. I go back ways with her as well, but she plays an agent trying to, make sense of everything, and she's great. We have a newcomer, really, as Dr. Manhattan, and I'm not even sure how to pronounce his first name. Is it Yahya Abdul Mateen II? But we see other people that we know, Don Johnson, Louis Gossett Jr., Tim Blake Nelson. There's a lot of people throughout this, the course of this show. But all right, so here's the deal. I don't do spoilers on my channel. I don't like them. So I really can't say too much more about the plot. I guess I'm just going to talk about why this show is so great and why the critics are right to give it a 95 and the audience is wrong to give it a 55. The only thing I can really think about that whole discrepancy is that this is one of the most, think piece television shows I've ever seen in my 42 years. And it's no surprise that it comes from Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse. I am a huge Lost fan. Lost was my show back in the day. I admit the last season sucks. I admit that. There's way too many unanswered questions. And people kind of saw where things were going in season 2 or 3, and they said, no, it's not that, and then it was that. So what's interesting about this is I read this in an article that I think it was Damon that said it, that they wanted to... he didn't mention this was because of Lost, but I imagine it is. He said they wanted to really have an end game for this show, or for at least the season, before even diving in. And so that way they can build up to it. And so I think they've done that in fine form here. But Lost was one of those shows, and it was really probably the first one of its kind that I remember really falling for, in terms of like every week I had to be there live. I had, sometimes I would take notes because I would call my friends afterwards, my old bosses at the radio station I used to work for, and we would just dish like, oh, did you catch that thing? Oh, that thing said this, and oh, what did that mean when this person, and so we would dissect it. I never had that with a TV show before, and Lost was great at that for many, many years, and this falls into that same vein. Like I almost wish I did have HBO so I could watch it live and discuss it with someone at the end of every episode, because there is so much going on in these episodes. And truth be told, I didn't do this for every episode, but there were like 3 episodes that I sought out explanation videos on YouTube because I wanted to make sure I caught everything. I did it for the first episode, the last episode, and episode 6, which is it's funny. I said this last week about Rami, that the one episode about Rami as a youth when 9/11 happened and being a Muslim in America was one of the best best written episodes of half-hour television, the last decade or whatever. I don't know exactly how I said it, but episode 6 of this, holy bagoli, like it is. I mean, I don't know. It's some of the finest television writing I have ever seen in my life. I mean, it is a brilliant episode. The difference between that and the Rami episode you can watch as a standalone, because Rami as an adult isn't even in the episode. Rami Youssef, the actor, is not in it. It's all about Rami as a 12-year-old kid when 9/11 happened, or 13 or whatever. Here, every episode is so connected. I mean, you can't just pick this episode out without any other context and love it in the same way. But oh my God, it packs a wallop. Brilliant from the word go. So loved that particular episode, but the whole series really. But so without spoilers, here's what I can say about this show. We already talked a little bit about the density of the themes and the episodes and how everything's connected and stuff. But like, for example, what makes episode 6 so great is there's this drug called nostalgia, and it puts you back into your mindset. But Angela was taking it for her ancestors, and so we see a lot of what her ancestors went through and racism on the force, and it's just, you could watch it as a standalone, but I don't think it would have as much impact because you wouldn't really know what else was going on in the episode. But the interconnected nature of these episodes. There are so many callbacks in these 9 episodes to the pilot, or to episode 3, or to somebody said this in this, and they end up repeating certain things, like the silent film that were shown in the very first episode, when the Tulsa Massacre happens. That particular piece of film comes up again and again, and then it gets actually sort of reenacted. And so this is a show where you really have to pay attention. A lot of my shows, look, I'll be honest, I watch a lot of TV. A lot of things I'm just, not that it's on in the background necessarily, but, I'll be on my phone playing a game, or, I'll be chatting with somebody on Facebook, or whatever. But this is one you need to, sit and watch and focus on, just like Lost back in the day. And so, that's great. The set design, the production of this, the makeup, the characters, the backdrops, the scenery, everything about this, it works on that level. The music, they had, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross do a lot of the music, and there's this one sort of permeating song that comes up a lot, and it tends to be towards the end of episodes, but it showed up in the middle of a couple too. But it's this sort of just pounding, like, instrumental. It reminded me a little bit of the what is it? Is it Halloween with Michael Myers, where it's like cha 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 cha? Like, it reminded me a little bit of that, but more on the electronica side. And if you've seen it, hopefully you know what I'm talking about. But like, that would swell up and you'd be in it. But other than that, other than the Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor score to the show, the soundtrack, like, there's one that takes place in the 80s, and we sort of learn the basis for one of the other characters, and the Tim Blake Nelson character. And, all the 80s music that's played, it starts out with Howard Jones, Things Can Only Get Better, and and immediately, like, things get worse, but maybe they get better for some characters. It's all of the music is very, very carefully selected, and I'm a big music dude, so for me, stuff like that is very important to set the tone of something like this, and did it brilliantly. What else? The acting is, dude, the dude that plays Dr. Manhattan, he is phenomenal. Like I said, I don't know who he is, but I'm willing to bet that we will see more from him in the future. Because of this, I think he's going to get big. what else can I even say? Yeah, I mean, the acting is superior, but really, the crux of this show, aside from all of that stuff I mentioned, the music, the production, is the intricate writing. The look, the acting's great, the music's great, but if you don't have this layered writing that this show has, you are left with something that is, not as powerful. And I think the reason that it's got a 55% for the audience on Rotten Tomatoes is because it is too dense for people. And I'm not saying that people are idiots, but look, you have a huge contingent of this population that made Big Bang Theory the #1 sitcom for years. And look, I liked Big Bang Theory for a while, but every episode is the same after a bit. And so, after season 4 or 5, I stopped watching. But, there is no nuance to that show, Look, and I love a dumb sitcom as much as the next person. Some of my favorite shows are sitcoms of all time. I can't deny that. But I think people may have been going into this expecting some sort of superhero thing, and not getting it, because it's just, look, this is not the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is not Spider-Man. It veers close to some of these things, like maybe Logan. The Logan movie was very dense, but that was condensed in a 2-hour movie, not a 9-hour miniseries. But look, full disclosure, I didn't like the Watchmen movie. I really didn't. So I was not thrilled to kind of dive into this, but then once I watched the first episode, and I love Virginia King, so that did help me kind of get over that. But after I watched the first episode, I was like, oh no, I can see this being something real special. And I can't put my finger on why I didn't like the Watchmen movie, because I haven't seen it since it was first out. So it's been like 12 or 13 years, something like that. So I don't really remember. I just remember it being very long, very confusing, because I don't know if they left out some of the stuff from the graphic novel, and so I didn't really understand everything. But this is a show, let me tell you this. I've never read the graphic novel. You don't need to read the graphic novel to enjoy this. You don't need to watch the movie to enjoy this. Now, I think it will maybe help, because they certainly have a lot of Easter eggs in here, and there are certain things I did not know necessarily what they meant. But everybody is explained. They explain exactly who Dr. Manhattan is, what he's done, where he is right now. Same with Ozymandias. Sister Night wasn't even in the book, so she's a new character, so we don't need to have any previous knowledge of her character going into this. So, point being, I think maybe it would help, maybe, but like, I've never read the graphic novel, and I don't remember very much about the movie, to be honest. And, I still could follow along. They explain everything, and because it's not a reboot, because it's in a different, same universe, but in a different way, they take a different tack with it. I don't think you need that much previous knowledge of Watchmen lore, and maybe some people that read the graphic novel don't like this because it takes a different tack, and so that's why they graded it negatively on the audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. But look, this is a brilliant piece of fiction. It is a brilliant work. My only issue really with it is so layered that I think a person would realistically have to watch it about 3 times to really, unless they're going to, like me, at the end of every single episode, which I didn't do, dive into like these, the videos I watched explaining the episodes were like 10 or 12 minute videos, but there were some that were like episode 2 explained in, a 35-minute video. I didn't dive in that deeply, but if you only wanted to watch Watchmen once, you could do it, but I would recommend you seeking out some of those explaining videos for each season, because otherwise, I think you need to watch this 2 or 3 times to really, really get everything about it. It's so dense, so layered, and so freaking brilliant. It really is. I don't give A pluses for full series, because that would mean that just about every episode in it would have to be an A+, and I can't say that. My only really complaint is that it is so dense that it does require multiple viewings. I will say that. But this is just a great piece of work. I can see all the Emmy nominations. I hope it gets a lot of them coming up. So the big binge for this week, Watchmen, leaves with an A from me. Just absolutely fantastic. I really hope. And what's funny is Regina King has some stiff competition too, because it's like Kerry Washington's up for Pretty Little, not Pretty Little Liars. What's it called? Little Fires Everywhere. I think a couple of the gals from Mrs. America, or maybe they're up in supporting. I guess that makes sense because they're not main. But yeah, there's a bunch of Mrs. America people up, but I think one of them is up for Best Actress too. It might be Kate Blanchett. So like it's a tough category, but I would love to see Regina King win. But I would also look Little Fires Everywhere. Kerry Washington was the heart and soul of that show too. But it's hard to beat Regina King. I will be honest. But all right, that's it. We've prattled on long enough here. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe below. I am 2 people shy of 500 subscribers. So if you've made it this far and have yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so. I'd love to have you on board. But other than that, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.